Hello,
And
everybody.
hello, everybody.
Hi, my name is Varian Grant. I am the co-owner of Last Call Comics. Been so for the last 7 years, and founder of IndieVolt Media LLC. Started making comics way back in 2008. Made a book called Psycho Sirens. It was a black and white interior action comedy. I was the creator of that book. I am a father, a husband, a geek, a creator, a publisher, a reluctant taxpayer, and artist. Shamefully, not in that order. And you're watching Indie Vote Live, and this is a special report. So this is actually a special Indie Vote Live, right, Randy?
Special report.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you are,
Should
sir.
we should we hit the breaking news? No. Anyway, I'm Randy Zimmerman. I've been doing independent and alternative comics for many years. Arrow Comics, Weeby Comics, Massive Comics are all my mastheads. I've freelanced for many independent comic companies. Done just about everything in the market, including distribution, because the last 10 years I've been doing my own newspaper, uh, comics and entertainment paper that we circulated up here around the Flint, Michigan area called Flint Comics. So, big lover of comics, married with a cat, and two kids out of the house. So,
And everyone knows
there we
Lola.
go. Right now, I'm working on comic book stuff. Well, that's Lola down
Yeah,
below, and
yeah.
I also do the Zim Geek channel on YouTube. So,
That's right.
and that's Lola down below.
Yeah, and a copyright wave for just.
Yeah.
And today we're joined by the Indie Devil himself, the devil you know, Rob Anderson. Rob, how are you today?
I'm good. You forgot to tell him about my fetish agenda.
Oh yes, he's the devil. He's the indie devil
The
with the
indie devil.
fetish. Yeah, with the fetish agenda. Ask him about his fetish agenda. Um,
Put on a t-shirt.
yeah, yeah.
Are you? You're gonna put that on a T-shirt and take a
All
shot of you next to it on the beach.
Right under here, it'll just be like, ask me about my fetish agenda.
There you go.
And we're here and we're laughing, but the reason why we're doing this special is because it was no laughing matter actually. I got an email in. I sent it to Rob. A viewer of I guess Indie Vault that knows Rob or vice versa wrote us an email, and she asked us the question, and we wanted to like, okay, let's we know Rob. We're gonna have Rob come on and talk about this. I'm gonna put the question up here on the screen. You can dive
Go.
right into it.
Hold on.
You ready? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
We. How could you guys have Rob, the indie perv, on the show? His comic was created to gratify his fetish that he likes to beat women. Oh, Alice Swanklow.
hmm
Is that a real name?
I have not checked. I did try to find. I did email back the email she provided. I didn't receive a return email. I didn't receive the automatic return email, so it went somewhere. But
Just as an outside question, was it a Gmail account?
it was a Yahoo account, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and I did reach out to her. I invited her on the show. Rob's request was to have her come on the show. He wanted to, to debate with her,
Yes.
and she would not return any of my emails. But we felt that it was still important to have Rob come on and clear the air because this is an email that someone feels this way, and normally when someone feels that way, you want to address it and clear the air. So that's what we're here to do today. Um, so uh,
And I might be overstepping here, but I think a lot of her opinion comes from a lack of education
it may be
that we're very big about on here,
yeah.
educating people. Am I wrong, Rob? Would you say that opinion comes from a lack of education?
I think you could mix it with a lack of education with a little bit of bigotness towards human sexuality and not being able to understand what she doesn't perceive as right and wrong in the life. Definitely one of those people who will get on a soapbox and tell you how to live.
hmm
And like I said, I wanted her here because I'd love to hear, first off, how does she even know what I do?
hmm
Where does she get off talking about my sexuality? Like, how does she even know?
Oh, damn it! Sorry, Rob. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this.
There we go.
Carry on, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, people want to talk about things they don't understand. They want to try to villainize people. She has no idea who I am. Let's be honest. She tried to find something she could attack me on. and didn't realize that I can actually sit here and not make fun of her, but just actually be honest about the person she is. She's talking about a human being she doesn't know. It's very clear she doesn't know, because if she did, she'd know that my fetish had nothing to do with beating women. That's not what my fetish is. I don't even think she understands what a fetish is. The average person doesn't understand what a fetish is. For the record, when it comes to saying someone has a fetish, it's actually a medical diagnosis. It is based upon the fact that it is something necessary in a person's life. So, as a perfect example, for you to date a person, there is generally a type of person you're looking for. And I know that's gotten very complex, because some people call themselves pansexual. Some other new terms are being thrown around. So, but in the end of the day, we all need a certain aspect to be actually wanting to be sexual with the person. Of course, not considering into that the asexual community, which is not sexual at all. And I understand that and I respect that. But then again, that sexuality doesn't really have an attraction factor. So basically, the simplest way to put it so everyone can understand it, because it's very complex, is a gay person never chose to be gay. A straight person never chose to be straight. Someone with a fetish never chose to have a fetish. There are people who do this for fun. Don't get me wrong. I know many people in the community, the fetish community, that don't really have a fetish. They can go off into a vanilla life and be completely happy. For the record, a vanilla life is a life that does not have any fetish in it. And there are fetishes that aren't really fetishes that people call a fetish. And then there are sexual fetishes versus regular fetish. Perfect example, a woman who's into shoes could have a shoe fetish.
Oh.
A person who actually needs to have someone wearing shoes to have sex with them would be a sexual fetish. So there is a big difference, and there's Harvard research that goes into it. The number one thing that couples counselors tell couples to do when they're on the verge of a divorce is to actually implement BDSM. The reason that they actually suggest this, and this is what a lot of people don't know, like Alice, BDSM requires trust. BDSM requires communication. BDSM requires talking to each other and feeling safe with each other and being honest with themselves.
And to make sure we have that explanation, don't just assume people know what the initials mean.
BDSM, well, that's an argument within the community. Originally, it was supposed to be bondage, dominance, sadomasochism, but it also could be bondage, dominance, slave master, and there are a few other things that now covered under the umbrella. Within the community itself, there's an argument of how inclusive we should be. You have a lot of things that were never considered, including pet play. Some of the newer ones are things that have to do with an age play, which the original title of my book, when it wasn't perverted, it was actually made about age play, which my original title, which was Fetish Babies originally. You can see in the back of me, whatever side that is. That, it actually says it. Oh, that side. There goes the dyslexic going the wrong way. But yeah, I mean, originally we called it Fetish Babies. People thought it was about age play, or they thought something else. And that's the reason we changed it to Barbara Unleashed, because our culture, and it's an American thing, very much so. The American culture cannot handle sexuality. We are not great at talking about it. We're not great at dealing with it. We don't know how to express ourselves. So when you have someone like Alice show up and she wants to talk about me being a perv, look, first off, what's a pervert to her? Is it anyone who likes sex? You know, like, that's why I wanted her on the show. I really wanted to understand her point of view, and not to make fun of her, but I would have rather much more spent time talking to her, making her understand a culture that she clearly doesn't understand. Beating women, that's also a very sexist comment. How does she know that I'm not the one who would like to be into pain? Her statement exposes a lot of opportunity for her to grow as a human being and actually be part of a bigger conversation. Because one of the things, and one of the reasons I advocate for fetish so much, is I know people who've lost their children. I know people who've lost their jobs. I know people who have lost respect for having something they could never control. And I know a lot of people go, oh, well, it's dangerous. And here, even in the medical textbooks, there's a difference between an ism and a philia. Pedophilia, that's dangerous. There are a lot of philias, and then there is isms. The isms are generally not dangerous to anyone, but according to the DSM, which is changing and evolving, is not dangerous to anyone but themselves, while the pedophilia and all that, of course, is dangerous to other people and the people that they're abusing. However, even the DSM has recently changed a lot what goes on with BDSM, bondage, and even spanking. Now, there's a science behind it, and I don't know how much time you want to go into it, so I'll give you the short version. A lot of what happens into the BDSM culture, it gives, you guys know what a runner's high is?
No.
But even if we did assume that the viewer does not, or that the listener does not.
A runner's high is basically like anything that you do to exert yourself. When suddenly an adrenaline gland kicks in, it makes you feel high. You get high off of your own adrenaline and other actual chemicals. Now, the runner's high has a little bit of different than what the BDSM, which calls the subspace, or even just the act of playing. And a lot of people get this wrong. It is not about sex. BDSM for everyone isn't always about sex. Like when you're gay, it isn't just about being about sex, right? It's about connecting with the person you want to. Mm-hmm. What a lot of people are surprised about with BDSM is that I have personally played with people I've never had sex with. And we didn't really have what you would consider sexual contact. Like the official definition of sexual contact did not occur during what we were doing. And a lot of people don't understand that. And even to this date, I have friends who are like, I don't get it. I see it. I see the people that you've talked with and been around, people you've apparently been playing with, and I just don't understand it, but it seems to make you happy. And I think that's at least a more adult approach to it, as opposed to Alice, who talks about a community, not realizing how many millions of people are in that community, and probably the fact that she knows a few people who will never be open enough with her to tell them that they're into it, because, as I said, she shows bigot tendencies. The comment in itself is very bigot related. It not only has sexist undertones, because she instantly, and this is it, and I know it, I see it, I feel it a lot. They see a guy and they think it's about taking advantage of a woman, because that's how, especially the newer generation, is now trying to frame the BDSM culture. And to her credit, this comes from that horrible movie, 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Grey really showed what everyone in the BDSM culture and community would call an abusive relationship. But they became the stereotype for the BDSM culture, despite Harvard doing surveys, some other great accredited universities doing, not surveys, studies, that have said the exact opposite, that some of the healthiest relationships on the planet are BDSM related, just because it requires so much of an effort. I even went to the extent of creating a BDSM survey, which is an entire book that helps people communicate with them, with their partners, and even themselves, in a way that we don't really get to talk about. You know, we don't really get to talk comfortably about our sexuality. We just get told that we have to accept other people's sexuality and that we can't talk about it in public. It's a very weird conversation to try to have when you're always shamed to not talk about it. And if you talk about it, it's trashy, or you're a pervert. Because for people like Alice, it's really easy to put people in a corner and just call them names and not try to understand someone. And that's kind of sad. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's what makes the world worse, is that not only are we not willing to accept other people, we're not even, she proved today, wasn't willing to come on to even talk about it. She wanted to make a nasty comment and expected someone like me not to want to talk about it, and she'd be absolutely wrong. Now, notice, I don't have to make fun of her. I didn't make any joke at her expense. I've been honest about her. And the fact that I can be honest about her in this way says a lot about her character. Mm-hmm. She could have been here. I asked her to be here. But one of the things I said right away was, get her on the show.
Yeah.
Let's hear about what I'm up to. Let's hear about how she knows the things I do. Mm-hmm. Or is she just inferring? And I think there's a lot of inferring with someone like her who just wants to attack people. And not for nothing, we saw this in the 90s and in the turn of the century with the homosexual groups that were coming out, because I know there's a whole bunch with the LGBTQ. And every time one of those letters tried to come out, there was this pushback from people like Alice, who wanted to call it about pervasion and perverts and wanted to classify it as something. I recently had a fight with the girl I was dating, and this is one of the reasons we actually broke up. She turned around and said, well, that's just something you want to do sexually. Why don't you hide it? And we've been arguing for 40 minutes at this point. And I turned around, I was like, why don't you tell that to someone who's gay? And in that moment, she suddenly understood it. Because, yeah, I mean, in all honesty, the prejudice comes from people being aware of who you are. Like, I can hide who I am. I can go back to being just a person who hides in the shadows and doesn't really talk about who I am because I'm afraid to. I choose not to live that life, but I get you can. The term is being in the closet with the things that you have. And I choose not to, but sure, you can do that. And there are prejudices that you can't do that with, such as skin color, religion. If you wear something with your religious calling, whether it be a cross or a yarmulke or something else. So, when it comes to sexuality, there's a big pushback from people like Alice, like, well, you don't have to talk about it. But then Alice to go posting pictures, most likely, and this is me guessing, she would probably post pictures of her with her boyfriend bragging about how that's her boyfriend, not realizing that she has that freedom, but is taking other people's freedoms away. And that's really what this boils down to. People like her attacking people that she doesn't understand, hasn't spent the time to try to get to know, and hasn't shown up to actually defend her point of view. And I would have been more than willing to hear her point of view.
Do you think, Rob, that like in her question, which was how we have him on the show, um, she's basically saying that you created a comic to gratify uh, your fetish. So let's talk a little about your book, Barbara Unleashed, now retitled Barbara Unleashed. You changed the name of it to appease people, which some people never would have done. Um, so you change now. You change the name because not only were obviously you're someone who's used to dealing with the little snide remarks and comments, but there was they were going to deplatform you at one point, right? Like Facebook was going to shut you down.
They tried repeatedly. The problem was that Facebook, before this whole Me Too situation showed up, was willing to take my money for ads.
Mm-hmm.
I had them on that. The actual reason, the pushing point, mind you, there was a creator who told me, and I should have listened in the beginning. Barbara Unleashed was a runner-up title. I never really came up with a new title. It was just a title I decided not to use. And in the book, we still call her Blog Fetish Babies. For the record, so everyone understands, and for the gamers, you'll get this right away. I wanted to comment that was within the BDSM culture that kind of attacked the character because she was young and naive. She was a newbie, someone who got herself in trouble. The term itself is supposed to be an insult to the character, who then takes the insult and makes a website that is geared to helping other people not get abused and not get hurt. Alice wouldn't know this because I know Alice has never read my book. Clearly, she hasn't read my book. I don't even have to ask to know that she hasn't. Because everyone who's read my book has turned around and been like, even if they're not into a fetish, have said, okay, I understand things better now. You put it in a way I never saw. Because people don't see people with fetishes as human. And that's disgusting. The reason I changed the name, the really reason, the final straw, as it were, was someone actually contacted me and asked me how they could get pictures of children. And I reported them to the FBI, which, scary enough, the FBI sent me back an email that said, thanks, Rob. Like, as if we were friends and they knew who I was and they'd been watching me for a while. But more importantly, that told me this was sending the wrong signal to people I didn't want to send a signal to. So I had to change it. And we went Barbara Unleashed. We resubmitted all the issues. Because the story itself, and it should be noted that Alice might be happy to hear this or unhappy, depending on how biased she is and how much bigotry is in her heart. My number one fan base is female because it talks about protecting women. It talks about empowering women. It shows that when a woman gets beat, like she's talking about, it's that woman's choice. It's consent. Someone has chosen to put themselves in a scenario that they get to put boundaries on, which are called limits, hard limits, soft limits. And there's also things that my book goes over that actually helps couples play with each other in a safe, consensual way. And, that would be something that Alice might benefit from reading because she clearly doesn't understand things.
Have you
community?
Have you ever considered, with all the backlash and constantly having to defend yourself, and this isn't the first time. Obviously, things have happened. You ever make fun of the con at all?
People try, but you've met me. Do you really confront a person like me?
I have you ever? The reason I asked that is because I want to know if you've ever even thought about changing course from the. I mean, you have other properties besides Fetish Babies, Proper Unleashed. But if you ever consider just changing course, like you know what, I'm gonna just end this book and let that go and work on something that's more. You use the term vanilla, superheroes and.
Well, I do.
Mhm.
I have multiple projects. The ones that people buy the most are the fetish book. The one that people talk about the most is the fetish book. I had a Kickstarter for my kids' book. I couldn't get it to fund, but I put up Barbara Unleashed on Kickstarter without promoting it. I make $500-600, not even trying. Literally launch it and never look at it again. Because when we were rebranding to Barbara Unleashed, I didn't want to go back to the well. You know what I mean? I didn't want to ask people to help me make a book that had already been made, but I wanted to offer it to my Kickstarter audience. I brought it in at a low dollar amount. We didn't do bells and whistles, really. I said, here's the new book. We updated the look of it. We did go in. We changed the size from magazine to regular. This is your opportunity. I warn you, we're going to be doing a trade in about a year. Do not buy this if you want the whole trade. Buy this if you want collector's items, because we'll only be doing 100 of each of these issues. And that's what I did. And people backed it. The first campaign made, I think, like $700, and all I put it in was for like $35. And that was a mistake. It was meant to be $350, but I didn't need money at that point. And to your question about people confronting me, for the most part, there are some people who say some nasty things. It's usually women, because men don't have, like I said, they don't generally want to pick a fight with me and have a verbal conversation that they don't think will go well for them. Women usually, and this is my number one giggle, it's the Wonder Woman cosplayer. The Wonder Woman cosplayer shows up and goes, I can't believe they let you in the show. And I get to ruin her day and explain to her that Wonder Woman was exactly a fetish spokeswoman for the fetish community. And that is like my favorite part of going to a show.
Right. Do you think now? Let me see here if I can bring this up here. All right, there we go. You like for me, and I think Randy could probably say the same thing. When we create stories, obviously we take things from our own life or our experiences or just even dreams or whatever, and they kind of make their way into our stories. It is not meant to like I don't create some of this stuff to influence people. Um, I don't create any of my stories to influence people. However, some of me, will get into those stories. Some of my beliefs, um, the things I think. But do you think that? I mean, you're the forefront of the character. I mean, of that character. When you have to almost explain the lifestyle to people when they come to the con and they see that book and they want to know why do you have fetish and free spanks and hugs on your book? My child is here. I mean, does that ever get tiring? Are you tired of it?
No, it empowers me more because clearly we're at a point. The same person who tells me about the fact that I have free hugs and spanks on a poster. And mind you, I've gotten we're trying to trim down anything that would be negative if there are children around. I'm a parent. I'm very sensitive to the fact that we have some art that's risque. It doesn't violate any term. There's no nudity. But I've seen enough kids look at it that I decided it was too far. It's in a book. You have to flip to the page. But I don't have it displayed anymore because it was too far. But then on the same breath, that same person will come up to my table and say, well, there are kids around, and he'll have a T-shirt that says, sit on my face like you're my mustache.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's never a person who's in a suit and tie that has an issue. It's the person who you'd expect to have an issue, who probably shouldn't be a parent, because I will raise my child to be okay with his sexuality and have conversations with him at the appropriate age. But there are kids now, 10, 11, and 12, looking at things, trying to discover things. And if you put out there that things are negative that you don't understand, you could hurt a child. When I first found out I had a fetish, it wasn't a choice. I was 11. It was something that became painfully obvious to me. that I was attracted to something. And mind you, I was 11 in 1990. It was a much different time. There was no Nine Inch Nails yet. There was no sexual revolution with this type of stuff. As a matter of fact, I was learning to read using a dictionary, and I went to the library, and this is how I was learning to read: comics on one side, dictionary on the other. I looked up the DSM and other books about bondage and BDSM, and I honestly thought, from what I read, because they painted it out to be a psychopath, someone who's dangerous to the society, I honestly thought I was going to become the Joker. I was like, this is how the Joker began. They had a fetish. I was planning to dye my hair green. I was planning to go out and build a gang and become the Joker. That was it. That's who I was going to be. Luckily, 2 years, no, at that point, it would be 3 years later, the internet came around and I found a community. And of course, being 14 and very mature, I faked my age and started to talk to people much older than me about sexuality. But I actually saw a community, and I didn't even know what to call it. You have to understand, when these urges came to me, I didn't know what to call it. There were no names. There's not like a fetish fairy who pops up and goes, welcome to the club. We're going to explain all the rules here. There's none of that. And now these kids do have that. There's explanations even for a younger generation. Mm-hmm. I've talked about making my actual BDSM survey, not all ages, but for the like teen, because teens need to know how not to hurt each other when they're trying this, because their mom leaves 50 Shades of Grey on the kitchen table or in the living room coffee table. The kid might pick up the book. And let's be honest, kids don't even read books anymore. They go online. They watch these movies. We're not controlling the content. What we can control is the information and their understanding of things. And we're not doing that as parents.
Good point.
Lola's been in the same, Lola's been at conventions that you're at. And Lola, you seen Rob's booth. You've seen the big posters hanging up of Barbara, the character. I think there's one right there where she's being restrained, and there's some fetish play going on. What do you think about that? Were you offended at all? No. Not at all. I don't know if it's offensive. I mean, it reminds me of the times where, when I was going to cons. I know Randy can speak to this. Going to cons, there was things worse than that. One of Randy's first book has two monkeys between a pair of large female breasts.
It wasn't one of my first books, but one of my books does have that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, one of it was one of your most successful books.
Yes, one of my more successful books. Absolutely.
Yeah. Randy? Did you get any drawback from that? Did you get any flack?
No, but that was during the circle template age, when people, the majority of the people going to conventions were mostly male and were in no way offended by a pair of women's breasts. So we never had any angry moms. I never had anybody complain about that cover per se. I had a couple of girls kind of giggle and think it was naughty, but it was naughty in a playful way because they were covered. But I never had that kind of problem.
Rob, do you think you just tried this in the wrong? You're trying this in the wrong era. Like if you went back to the '90s, would Barbara Unleashed have been like a lot of the controversy? How about you, Randy? Do you think that he's? How
well, speaking from experience, I worked for 10 years in a bookstore that had an adult aisle. And there were a lot of comics. I picked up every comic that I could find at that point. And there were a lot of comics that covered BDSM that was just straight bondage and sadomasochism. So there is a mindset out there that is preset, very uneducated, very much like Alice out there, who just isn't aware of what Rob is talking about. And it takes an amount of education out there and openness about sexuality for people to understand what's going on. And I have to admit, when Varian first showed me your book, Fetish Babies, the first thing that popped into my mind was that it was some pedophilic title. It just seemed from the title of it that it was pedophilic. And I'm real happy that you're on today to give this kind of an education, because even I'm learning stuff. So it's all good.
And Varian, let me ask you a question. Would you ask someone in 1960s if they're at the wrong time to introduce black characters?
I think that in 1960, well, If it's me, yeah.
I,
But yeah,
I think in the
yeah.
'60s the era was starting to change already because of the black exploitation
Well, then the
films. So
50s.
Yeah,
The
yeah. In the
50s.
in the
50s,
'50s it would have been a problem. Absolutely.
yeah.
But then that's the time to do it because it is
Mhm.
a problem. When it's okay and everyone else is copying me and making all fetish books,
Hmm.
then I won't be at the right time because my book isn't about exploiting BDSM. It's about explaining it.
And
My,
again, to keep your example going, back in the '50s or before that, if there was a predominant black character out there, he would have been drawn very stereotypically.
Ebony
He would
White.
have had the large lips. He'd be carrying watermelon and loving fried chicken, and that was because comics, especially during the '30s, '40s, and '50s, relied back on public stereotyped and perceptions.
I do love fried chicken.
Even if you,
No
well,
stereotype.
that's, I'm not saying that anyway. Even back in the, I believe it was the early '40s, when there was an all black publication called All Negro Comics, they stuck within the stereotypes of the day. Even though it was black creators and black artists and writers, they still did stereotypical. What was seen at the day as stereotypical black characters.
Yeah, I think that I just wonder like if now because I hate to see anybody go through if they picked up a copy of your book and they're flipping through it, they understand at the end of the book, oh, this is to inform, not to influence. Something that we do on the show.
Hmm.
And so many people are making that judgment based on a name, based on a cover, based on the fact that, oh, this guy just wants to beat women. And I don't get that from you, Rob. But most people, if they go to your Facebook, you talk about comics and show pictures of your son going to school. You're not someone who's like, I don't even think I've ever seen you post an anti-woman like remark on social media, which would be the place to do it if one was going to do that. So I'm not sure where a lot of Alice's question comes from, obviously. Um,
well, I mean, it's really simple. If we don't like what someone else is doing, we just put it in the way we want to put it. How
mm,
can we insult someone? How can we make a joke of someone? How can we attack a person? She doesn't know who I am. I guarantee you she doesn't know zip about my life, doesn't know about my journey, but she knows what she likes, and she's president of the world in her mind, like a lot of people. And they get to decide how they label people. And
do
it's,
you?
you said, is this the wrong time? No, it's the right time because people like her. And it's funny, I have had several publishers, comic book publishers, ask to take my property. The first thing they want to do is put Barbara on the cover tied up naked. That's just it. That'll make a lot of money. I could lean into that. Just make it very sexual. I
Right.
choose not to. I have chosen deliberately not to do that with this story. Especially this first arc is about educating people. It will get a little more racy, but it'll be natural. You know what the number one thing my fan base has asked me to do, Varian?
What's that?
Be more sexual. That's me being a good writer.
Mm,
That's me being asked to do more. I was able to earn my credit with the first couple dates I had with them on the first couple books I had, that they're now comfortable with me and they want to see more. They want it to be taken to the next level. That's how you create story. I didn't just
What?
put her naked with her woo wash showing so
Mm,
people could just go, oh man, look, she's naked and helpless and scared and terrified. One of the worst things right now we have in the BDSM culture is for those who look up a porn about BDSM, it's more than likely about abusing and raping a woman and making her look terrified. And
mm,
that is not the community. That is people who don't understand it, perverting it, because people like Alice are encouraging them that that's what people want. And the truth is, the number one category for BDSM is home versions, amateur, people who are doing it together at home because people feel that more comfortable and it's not gross and icky. When you see someone who's terrified, I don't know about you guys or anyone on the panel listening or even listening, I don't want someone who I'm intimate with to look terrified of me. Just a thing. I don't want someone to look scared when I'm having, something intimate with them. I don't know how everyone else is, but
mm.
that's terrifying to me. And I think people like her only see it one way.
Well, and when I ask if it's the right time, what I mean is, if because my feelings, if you did this book in the '90s during the Circle Template era, there would have been no problem. Everyone would have you would have been a millionaire by now. There would have been Barbara movies, and some company would have co-opted the character to make films. It would have been, you wouldn't have had this problem, and now this softening. I know some people call it an awakening, but this softening of people's feelings, it makes it hard for you to want to put out a book. I had a book where I had a character.
I think softening might be a description in the wrong direction. Everybody seems to want to pigeonhole, and they want to cement their dogmatic views of certain things instead of going out there and actually learning or getting an informed opinion as opposed to a one-sided opinion.
I had a character who was betrayed by her teacher, and several bad things happened to her that led to her death and discard. Her body was discarded rather unceremoniously, and she came back from the dead, and she had abilities and powers when she came back from the dead. And this story's been told 100 times, but it was the fact that I really laid into why her teacher took her, what happened to her when she was taken. And when I say I laid into it, I didn't spend more than like 2 pages, doing like a little flashback of what would have happened or what happened. But I got told by one artist, I will not draw this. This is horrible. Why would you want to put this type of content out there? And I said, this is happening somewhere in America right now. I guarantee you. And they told me they wouldn't draw it. And I was told by several people that it was sick. Well, about a year ago, around the corner from me, around the corner in my neighborhood, I live in the suburbs, it was happening to a mentally handicapped woman. It was happening. They kept that woman in a shed and had people come by and do horrible things to her. Mm-hmm. And yet when I say, hey, here's a book 10 years, before this happened, I was told that I was, wrong. So I really sympathize with, and I wasn't saying, oh my God, the teacher's a great guy. I sympathize with Rob. He's trying to educate people on this lifestyle. If anything, there's some young girl right now, because Rob, I got a question for you about the community, which I have, no knowledge about. Obviously, there are people who get in that community, as in any community, and there's bad actors, right?
Of course.
They get in. Do you think that your book could save some young girl who's like, I think I like this, I want to get involved, and then she goes and gets with some pervert, some real actual pervert who hurts her?
Have you read my story?
I have looked through the book. I went through the book at I don't have a copy, but I went through the book at MegaCon.
All right, I'll send you PDFs of it. The actual story starts off with her being approached by predators.
Okay.
The BDSM community. The second book goes over everything that she did that led to that problem. Now, whether it's her fault or not is a very big discussion that will go throughout the series. But she goes through something that is abuse, and it leaves her. And if you ever look at my book, the first book is about her telling her story. And at the end of it, she's left in a very precarious way. And I actually got emails from people. Remember, she's writing a blog. I got emails from people. Did she die? Is this a rape kill fantasy? And my answer was always, how could she die if she's writing a blog? I literally had to put in a brand new page at the end to explain that she had not died in the first release, because everyone who'd read the PDFs in early release were confused whether she was dying or not. The second book's art drastically changes because she's going through abuse, and it shows the fact that she's abused. We spent an entire issue showing the damage that can happen when someone is taken advantage of. And the actual theme of the book for the third book was mentor search, where it gets a lot more colorful because she knows she's looking for an actual mentor to help her learn how to safely play in the community and not be abused again. The actual tagline was for, after having her fetish stolen from her, can Barbara find someone to help her regain it? And it's the truth. And one of the character's biggest slogans is, I don't want to be saved, I want to be taught. And it's empowering that character to not want to be some sexual object to people, but instead be an empowered woman who can actually know how to spot people who are predators. The entire BDSM survey, and I don't say this on anything that I'll like, if I do a Kickstarter, I'll never admit this on the Kickstarter because no one likes to be preached to. But the entire book has an undertone that tells people to avoid abusive people by giving actual hints and clues. So instead of just writing a paragraph of to avoid these people, throughout the whole book, as you read it, it actually gives you a line of what not to let people cross and to put boundaries in place. And that's what the entire series has been about, putting boundaries in place, being able to play safely. Because 50 Shades of Grey taught people it was okay to be abused. And I'm not being facetious about that, as actually people were in the emergency rooms. Couples had to go to therapy because when you go to someone and go, hey, spank me, then Alice gets her dream to come true and someone gets beaten. Because there isn't just a way to just hit a person. You have to know the person. Every human being is different. If I hit someone in the ass as a spank playfully that has tender skin and is very sensitive versus someone who could get a baseball bat and not notice, each one of them will have a different experience. And you have to understand and know that. And people like Alice just think that I go out dressed up as Deadpool and apparently beat the crap out of people without permission. And that's not what I'm doing. That's what Deadpool does. And, you know, I also think it's funny that she assumes that I'm straight. And for the program, I'll admit I am straight. I wish I was bi. That'd be more choice. It'd be more fun. But I am straight. But she assumes again that this is just about beating women. And this shows who she is. She has already depicted me as a person, hasn't seen me as a human being, and has made me a cartoon character, which is what my book stands against.
Do you think you know Alice?
No, I don't. I looked up online. I saw someone I'm not 100% sure could be them. They might have just changed their name. The closest thing to the name I got. I sent it to you in Messenger.
Okay.
I wouldn't bring it on.
No,
later off air. We don't know who it is. I don't know who it is. But then again, they don't know who I am. So I'm not talking about her specifically. I'm only talking about her words, and I'm holding her responsible for the things she said. I haven't made any comments about what I think she is because I don't know who she is, and I wish more people spent time to do that.
Yeah, and I wish that Alice would have made the decision to come on, even if she wanted to just come on without a camera, which I told her. I said, you can come on. You don't even have to put a camera up. You know, I can keep you off air. You can just hear your voice. You know, that, you know, I'd like you to come on and discuss it. And I gave her the time and the opportunity, and we gave her about 2 days to respond, and she did not. It is it's a scary thing to have happen. I mean, someone comes up to you and they start calling you the indie perv, and next thing you know, they're trying to come at you with shows or trying to have shows shut you down, because we live in an age where that happens, where people are trying to constantly deplatform and cancel you. We live in cancel culture. And if they just took the time to pick up your book, yes, it's not for everybody, but for those people who take the time to read it, I think they'll find something beneficial.
I'd argue it is for everyone, because I think everyone should understand each other. And I think if you're going to have opinions, at least if you're going to have an opinion. If you're not going to have an opinion, that's fine. But if you're going to have an opinion, be educated. Does that make sense?
Have an informed opinion. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Don't just assume and assert your opinion based on something that you don't clinically know or educationally know. Don't put your opinion out there. I was talking to people as a politic thing, and they were saying, it's ridiculous that California only has 2 senators, and then 10 states with the same population. Oh, no, it was 17 states with the same population should have as many senators as California. And I was like, what you don't understand is senators are based upon the fact that everyone's supposed to have a fair vote in the Senate. Every state gets 2 senators for that specific reason. People are uneducated. They don't understand things, and they rush to these judgments because it's easy to put up a girl with a black eye and say, hey, this is what BDSM is. And you know what? That's unfair. That's not what BDSM is. As a matter of fact, I would wager that there's more abuse in relationships in vanilla relationships than there are in BDSM relationships. Because in a vanilla relationship, when someone says a safe word, oh, wait, there are no safe words in a vanilla relationship. That's right. There is no exit. There is no standards. No one ever in a vanilla relationship goes, hey, don't ever talk to me this way or our relationship will be over. Or a lot of people don't put those boundaries. The BDSM relationship puts those boundaries in place. And that's the important thing. As far as shows blackballing me, I've only had 2 shows tell me no, and it was very bigoted wise, and I laugh about it because you could tell it was. But for the most part, any day someone wants to size up the person I am versus them, and I'm not saying I'm a better person. I'm saying I know who I am. I have no problem taking the tape out. And this is why it was important not only to create a kid's book, but to promote it on the same table as my other stuff. Because a lot of people go, you create a fetish book and a kid's book, and you can see there's a change. There's a humanity right there. And suddenly they're like, wait, that doesn't make sense to my small mind. And suddenly their mind gets bigger. Because suddenly they're like, wait, if he's creating a kid's book that talks about morals, maybe I don't understand people who have fetishes. Maybe they're not the people I made him out to be. And a lot of shows who want to investigate me, well, he creates that fetish book, but he's also an indie advocate. He's someone who talks about, look at the community that he has built behind him. Look at all the people that he knows. And look at the fact that he does a forecast and promotes his show. A lot of people are very happy. And if they're nervous about my content, you know what they ask me? Hey, Rob, could you do us a favor? This is a kid-friendly, like a family-friendly show. Could you not display your BDSM book? You know what I say, Varian?
What's that?
Okay, I get that. That's fine by me. I have no issue with that. Because I am a creator, and I don't just create books about fetish. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, I'm happy not to hang that poster. I'm happy not to hang that one. Instead, we'll put out the Indie Advocates logo. We'll put out the Cat Dad and Supermom logo. And I know that. There are shows I go to that are kid-friendly, geared towards kids. My fetish, nothing about my fetish stuff gets onto the table. If someone asks me, it's on hand. I do have people who show up and ask me, hey, Rob, do you have any of your books on you? And I'll be like, yes, they're behind the table. I'm respecting the con. I don't have an issue with that.
Right.
But people like Alice don't know that because people like Alice don't have a conversation with me. People like Alice have just made decisions, and she thinks this is a weak point for me. She's mistaken. I don't care. I am a strong enough person to stand up to anyone and say you're wrong. And being a moral person, someone who does the right thing more than I do the wrong, I'm not perfect. I do stupid things sometimes. But I do more right things than I do wrong, and I'm always open. That's why we have a debate. Every day I allow people to change my mind. I just expect this funny thing. It's called a fact. And this fact doesn't care about your feelings. This fact doesn't care how your parents raised you to believe. The fact is only a fact because it can be proven time and time again or is based upon a law. I don't care if you don't like a law. I don't like laws about speeding. When a cop pulled me over, I thanked him for his time. I took my speeding ticket, and I didn't complain or whine to him about it. I'm an adult. I was speeding. It was my fault.
That's where you and I differ. I wasn't speeding. Your gun's broken. I'll see you in court, asshole.
But I don't make excuses. I am who I am. That's my moral core, you know?
Do you I mean, like, you know, so you don't think, you know, I got a list of questions. I've gone through all of them though. But the last question I have personally is, do you think some of this might, and you kind of touched on it, has something to do with the success you've been having on Cat Dad and Supermom? Like, oh, now he's invading, you know, my kids, because now, you know, and I'm just speaking like an idiot like Alice. I'm sorry to call her an idiot, but it is kind of idiotic that she makes a comment. If she comes and says, all right, well, this guy, he put this kid book out. My kids are obsessed with it. But I look up this Rob Andersin guy, and all I'm seeing now are, you know, bondage stuff, and it makes me uncomfortable. Oh my gosh, this guy's he's a perv or whatever. Do you think any of this has to do with that success of Cat Dad Supermom?
I wish there was more public success with Cat Dad and Supermom. People who've read it have loved it. I haven't been able to do that, probably because I'm the guy who creates a fetish book. And people don't give me the chance that I could write something beyond a fetish book. And I think that's being held against me publicly. And as far as the comment about it being something that people are obsessed with or like and go look me up, I had to not credit myself under my name as a creator on Cat Dad and Supermom. I had used a nom de plume. I'd used my first and middle name and made myself Rob Gregory. Yep. And it's heartbreaking because it's having to step back a little bit from being someone who's proud of what I've created. But again, to go back, you have to protect children. And the argument was made to me, if a kid looks up my name, Rob Andersin, what do they see if my name's in the book? as opposed to Robert Gregory. You look up Robert Gregory, Cat Den Supermo. That's all that comes up.
Randy, and he's not the first person to have to do that. I mean, there have been people who wrote adult material and then did kid material, and vice versa throughout history. I mean, like creative history, right? Yeah. Anybody spring to mind?
Uh, yeah, quite a few people, but I'm not gonna bring them out. Especially during the '90s, the late '80s, and the underground movement. You had a lot of guys use fake names, guys and girls use fake names for doing more adult material, just so that they didn't have the adult material, like exactly what Rob's running into, associated with the other material or their career. There's a big story, and I can bring this out because he's passed. But Steve Ditko used to live right across the street from a guy who would draw a lot of adult material. And if you go and look at that adult material, there's a lot of times that I'm sure Ditko paid his bills because he helped that guy out, because of a lot of it looks like Ditko. So, and I can't remember the other artist's name right now, and it might have been all Ditko himself just to pay bills.
Yeah.
But it's really obvious it's obviously in his style.
Superman creators, the one that went on to make BDSM art.
Yeah.
And remember the Superman creators. So the Superman creators were getting screwed by DC. They got mad. So they were also wanted to do some BDSM bondage art. They actually drew Lois and Superman doing BDSM. They didn't call them that, but they are the exact tell. These are the same people who are doing it.
I'm not personally aware of that, but I would love to see it.
Yeah, it's some really cool. You have to look.
I bet it's awesome. So I really like their style in the early Action Comics.
I want to point out something else too that you guys. I mean, and this is it's really telling. Lola has gotten into the publishing game. She has a publishing label called is it Madfire? Madfire Comics, and she has for her logo a devil girl drawn by a pretty well known, I'd say, artist that draws big breasted women engage in sex or role play or even BDSM. She's got nothing but atta girls from everybody. Atta girl, can't wait to see what you do. Good job, love the work. There's something telling about that Rob does, because I wonder if Lola would have done Barbara Unleashed, would she be getting the same type of oh my gosh, you're a pervert, I don't why is this, would she be getting that because she's a female? And I think some of that, unfortunately, I think some of the times some of the flack Rob's getting is because he is a I hate to use this term, one occurrence,
large
cis
male,
white male. Yeah. He's the standard white male by appearance. You present as a cisgendered white male.
I'm Mr. Male. I don't.
What do you say?
I think he froze.
Oh, boy. I said I don't have a cis. I'm just a male. Luckily, no answer here so far. No cis.
I never understood the cis. I'm like, I guess it means like that's what you are. You're born as and you present as. I believe I need to educate myself on that too. But there's so many terms.
It's actually a Greek term, something to do with standard.
Okay.
And it's the medical people were using it for transgender people to feel more comfortable, because the idea that transgender people, because to call me the normal would mean they're abnormal, and that's fair to them. So I understand it. I just don't think it needs to be used when introducing me in a conversation, because I'm just a male.
Yeah.
Because I was born in 1978 when there was no cis. So maybe the kids nowadays have to do that. They get tacked on, but I'm grandfather didn't. I just get to be a male.
Hey, you know what? The birth certificates have changed radically. My son's birth certificate, his first one, said white, and I thought that was hysterical. I'm like, hey, we're gonna ride this and see how long we can go with this. He's gonna fell his way upward through life. It's gonna be awesome. Ivy League colleges, everything. It's gonna be awesome. Um, but wait till he shows up. Uh, um, and Rob, I don't think you're a pervert. I've talked with you. We've had dinner together. Um, we talk about comics, and you have uh, championed this industry. You've kind of, you're always coming out in support of other artists and creators, even some that you don't agree with. Uh, so I'm surprised to see people kind of target you and call call you, oh, he's a pervert, he's putting out perverted books without even taking the time to read them. And another thing is, like, I mean, Randy,
We've had those discussions before about people needing to get off their high horse and get an education.
yeah, because I mean, like, Randy, I mean, I here's the thing. I've sat next to Randy, and even myself, I've gotten them. Randy, a couple other artists who probably don't want to be named, and they've gotten requests from convention attendees come up to you, hey, could you draw this for me? And they normally want a character scantily clad, or engaging in full-on coitus. And some artists have to make the decision. Now, you're not an artist, Rob, so you don't have to worry about that, but I'm sure you've probably been commissioned, haven't you?
To write porns, actually. Yeah. I've been offered to write porn several times.
It's not porn, Rob. It's erotic fiction.
No, they told me it was flat out porn.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different then. As long as that's what they pigeonholed it, then that's what it was.
No, they were like, how dirty can you get? That was part of the job interview that apparently I was on just because I told them I wrote a comic book. So anytime I want, I can go write porn. There's money in it. But again, it's that moral fiber thing. Right now, I have to stay clean of that, because then people like Alice will come running by and say, see, I was right. He's a pervert. Once I make my millions and make Barbara Unleashed, I'll go back and write porn.
Now, Lola, as a cam girl yourself, do you think that like people contact you and they have questions regarding
what I'll do?
Yeah, what you'll do. Questions regarding if you have like, you've been asked about BDSM, and she had a wish list for a while, and people were sending her stuff off the wish list that was BDSM related. Hey, take this, we want to send you this, or they'll just buy stuff and send it. She had a PO box for a while. She was getting tons of content, and the thing is, no matter what Alice here says, if Rob would have made that book, Barbara Unleashed, Rob may have done it to educate and inform, but there's also a money component to it. And if it didn't make money, Rob would work on issue 2 and 3 and so on. It wouldn't be funding on Kickstarter. But I would tell people like Alice that there's a market for it. Mm-hmm. There's a market for his book. Mm-hmm. And maybe she needs to check her own biases and find out, and if she thinks the man is a pervert, I offered her an opportunity to come on today, talk to us about it, and to engage Rob and educate Rob. But the other thing too is this. Another thing, I have never opened up my email, and Barbara Unleashed popped up on the screen. I've never opened up Rob's Facebook, and it was a page, click by click, forced me to watch it to even sign into Facebook. He has a book you have to buy. He's not forcing you to read it. He's not forcing you. He'd like you to read it, but he's not forcing you to read it. You don't have to read it. So to get mad at him because the book exists, there's a lot worse books that exist. I just seen one the other day, and at the bookstore. I don't understand why. Matter of fact, guys, I seen a book that was actually a prop from a movie, and it contained garbled, like, this text and Esperanto inside of it. It was
It wasn't the Book of the Dead, was it?
no. They got
Covered in human skin.
no. It's a book made by a guy who makes book props for movies, and it was just and they wanted like $45 for it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a
Really?
question. I have a question for you guys.
Hmm.
Who's the bigger pervert? The person who writes honestly about a fetish book, or about all the other creators who use fetish in their books to try to make their book look exciting? Who add in those images to try to entice, who put tied up women on their covers just to get people to buy their actual books? Who's the pervert, really? Because I see that a lot. I know Marvel DC ties up Catwoman. How often? How often has Lois Lane needed Superman to come save her? How often has this been in our culture?
That was the wonderful 50s, though.
No, now. Back in the new turn of the century, they had that cover. Marvel. It was the Heroes for Hire. They had the 3 females tied up on a cover, and they got a lot of flack for it.
Yeah.
But it became one of the best-selling books that year.
I think that they probably have too many. Well, I would think that people who do that now, they do it to get the cheap buck. They do it to get, I'm gonna make this character half naked on the cover. Hopefully you'll buy it. I'm gonna cover it with, this type of coding, and it's gonna be. I mean, look, I've seen people sell amazing things. I've seen people sell body pillows that warm up or that move or that vibrate. And Rob's not doing that. He's just here to read a book.
Lola's laughing. Anyway,
yeah. He's asking you to read a book. It's not, and it's education. There's
not a big deal.
There's no big deal in that book. There's nothing that I've seen when I flipped through it that made me say, oh, this is NC-17. And you're willing, like you said, to not hang the posters, if asked. You're willing to
respect the atmosphere of the convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the problem is. And that's why I was, Robin, we talked about it. You said he's no one but I was wondering, did you piss off anybody? Because Rob is known to be quite vexing. And
she's jealous. I'm not taking her side at all. But what if she's just jealous? Maybe she wants to get into it. But
you're saying she's a little inhibited?
Yeah, that could be what Rob's willing to teach her.
Could be what it
is. Rob, what do you think about that? Do you think it's possible that maybe she got the wrong mentor and now she thinks because that could ruin it for somebody, right? They get the wrong mentor and they're like, never this again. This hurts.
Okay, I won't speak for Alice. I just don't do that. It's just a public thing. I never speak for a person. However, it's an important question you asked in general. Yes, there are a lot of people who get abused because they're young women and they get attracted by an older person who knows how to manipulate people, and they're definitely predatorial. That's what my whole book's about. And they give young women a very bad experience that then colors the entire community as that because they only see it that way. And it's sad, but it's true. A lot of this book was starting to be written when I was back on a site called Vampire Freaks, and I ran an actual group. Not only did people, on Vampire Freaks, it was the URL.
He's frozen again. He'll unfreeze in a sec.
Thank you.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We can now. You froze up right after you said Vampire Freaks.
So vampirefreaks.com is the community about goth people. I ran at a point an actual site about bondage because it was popular in the goth community. And people could, and this is the type of site it was, people could take your name and then make fake profiles for you. So it was that kind of site. So people were very hidden in who they were. But one of the things that inspired me when I was young is that all these women would come and talk to me about how they had been abused. When I wrote this book, one of the major points of this was the fact that people were talking about it with me. I've had more than several women cry in my arms, thanking me for creating something that might stop what happened to them happening to someone else. And in the community itself, it seems that more women have a story about abuse than don't. And a lot of times women are taken advantage of. And it comes down to that 50 Shades of Grey reference where someone signs a contract like they're renting a car and they lose all their rights and they lose all their abilities. And that's not sensible. And that's not really how the culture is.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Rob, does Barbara Unleashed have an ending?
Not yet.
Not yet, no ending in sight. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it for us. I'm glad that you came on and you cleared the air on that. It was important. I want to make sure we got the word out that you're not, you know, actively going through Comic Cons trying to get young ladies to sign up. There's not a line around from your hotel room and screams of girls coming from out of it. But to love to throw a insult like, "Oh, Rob Anderson likes to beat girls," could be very damaging.
Rob Anderson's the indie perv.
Yeah.
Get bit card next week for that.
Yeah, maybe that's what we'll call this segment. It's Rob Anderson, the indie perv.
That Rob guy never took off until he owned the indie perv, and then that was it.
Yeah. And once he took that, he was off to the horse. He was off to the races. Yeah. So Rob, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you coming on with us, and we're sure we'll talk again, hopefully about things not related to Miss Swanklow's question.
Well, Varian likes to promote us as the most educated comics podcast around. I'm really happy that we had this chance to educate people.
Yeah, and be educated ourselves.
And yes, absolutely, and be educated ourselves.
And for anyone interested in the book, it'll be on Kickstarter in January.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We'll have you back on to promote that too.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, we'll have you back on. And you before we go here, you had put out was that a new sticker?
A new sticker?
Rob's I think he froze. Yeah. He put out a new sticker. He may have.
He's coming back now.
So I have a shirt. This is a sticker. It says "Free Spanks and Hugs." We sell it at conventions. But someone asked me last year, "Well, you should make a sticker that said I got spanked by you," and I was like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah." And then another person said that I should give something out like that. So now next year, everyone I spank at the table will get one. The truth is, you'll see a lot more guys wearing that because a lot more guys ask me to spank them than women, and that should be something that someone should tell Alice. All women want to be spanked. Sometimes it's a guy, and you have to spank a guy and then hug him and hug him. And yes, I will be making a sticker. Someone asked me, "Will I be making a sticker that said I got hugged by the Indie Devil?" Yes, we'll be making a sticker for that too.
Okay.
So,
Cool. All right, thanks for coming on, Rob. Thank you, people, for joining us out there in YouTube land, because this is going to air on YouTube. It'll only air on YouTube, and I'll put it on IndieVolt TV as well.
What about Twitch? Will the Twitchers be able to see this?
Should I put it on Twitch? I'll put it on Twitch. Why
Absolutely.
Not? Yeah, I'll upload it to Twitch. Why not?
It's all part of our educating the community.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. All right, guys. We will see everyone shortly. We'll be back here. You can catch IndieVolt live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. and every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. This is a special for Mr. Anderson, the Indie Devil with the Fetch agenda.
And Rob, before we go, where can they get Barbara Unleashed? Where can they find out more about you and the more about the Indie Devil?
Find out about Barbara Unleashed at barbaraunleashed.com. You can find about me and thousands of other creators at the Global Digital Comic Con, indieadvocates.com, and my own personal site at theindiedevil.com.
Great.
All right. So we'll see everybody back shortly. Until then, you can check us out on indievolt.com as well as here on our YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. We will see everyone very shortly. Until then, take care.
Thanks for watching. Take care. That's up to me.